Hello, everybody, and welcome to our October 2024 astrology forecast. Today, I'm delighted to have back on the show our esteemed faculty member, Celeste Brooks. So thank you so much for joining us again today, and how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me back.
It's always a pleasure to hear your brilliant insights. And I will make a note to the audience, we're recording this on September 4th because of our busy schedule, so we won't be able to refer to any newsworthy events for September as we go through. So, Celeste, let's jump into week one. What are your thoughts?
Well, here we come for week one with the solar eclipse. It's at 10 Libra. This is going to be the last solar eclipse in Libra, or the last eclipse in Libra for this cycle. And the North Node entered Aries and the South Node entered Libra back in July of 2023. And the nodes are going to switch in January. So this is really like a wrapping up of this cycle where there is the South Node in Libra, this drain in diplomacy intact in all Libra things, and an amplification of Aries energy, which can be conflict, going it alone, being independent, having courage, all of these kinds of things. So solar eclipses are new moons times 10 or 10,000, depending on how they hit your chart. So there can be some new starts with things seeded that will unfold. You know, some people will have events on the day or within a couple of weeks, but also through to the next solar eclipse next spring when we have the last one in Aries. So some things, some Libra topics. Libra rules relationships. It rules legal affairs, partnerships, especially the one-on-one type partners are some things you can think about with Libra. Art, culture, all of those kinds of things are some Libra topics. Before I get into the cycles, do you want to add anything about Libra topics?
Wonderful points. I really like what you said about the draining of diplomacy. And of course, in the United States here, we're in very polarizing time now. I think for the month of October, I think we're all going to be on our edge of our seats as we do the last run of the presidential election and all the campaigning. But it's quite interesting. We've got 10 degrees of Libra. Now, if you look at the US Sibley chart, this 10 degrees is falling on the US's natal Saturn. I've just got this whole feeling for the month of October and tying in for the rest of the year, this Venusian feel. We're in Libra in a Venus rule sign. And at this time, Venus is going to be in detriment in Scorpio. And I've got this sense of record numbers of women coming out to register to vote, coming up for the election, and in detriment in a Mars rule sign. I don't really want to swear on this, but it's a lot of pissed off females ready to take action. And as we have the Venus trine Saturn, organizing their events to come together and get people registered, get people active, put those structures in place to come out in November for what I think will be a record turnout for women. So this is just my general feeling of October altogether, really.
Yes, Venus will be in Scorpio. Yeah, the sign of its detriment. And a big thing about the election is that Uranus, which rules elections, is conjunct Algol, the fixed star, which some of the imagery of Algol is the Medusa imagery, the woman with the hair with her snakes who was punished for being assaulted and turned into a monster, as well as Lilith, who would not be subservient, Adam's first wife, who left or got kicked out of the Garden of Eden because she would not lay beneath him. She was not having any of it. So there is all that energy. And a modern day Algol is the childless cat lady, which has become an archetype that has been brought into the zeitgeist thanks to the vice presidential Republican candidate, as well
But
as,
those cat ladies will be coming out in full force, I believe.
yes, 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 yes. So and yeah, I love how yeah, Scorpio, Venus and Scorpio, strategic, angry, focused, hyper focused on this goal of, yeah, going forward, not backwards, is something you can think about with that as well.
Such
Now,
wonderful points. I actually want to touch back on what you said in our
okay.
July forecast. And this is how brilliant you are. You were so on point because you were talking about Algol You were talking about the Mars Uranus, and you were even talking about the leaders, the heads of leaders. And of course, we had the assassination attempt of the head of the Republican ticket. So it was just so on point. So it's interesting how you bring in Algon in again as we go back over those degrees. So that will be interesting to see what happens and what comes ahead.
Yes, it will. Thank you for remembering that.
I was like, Celeste, brilliant, absolutely spot on.
Oh, you're so sweet. Okay, so there are two different types of cycles with eclipses. We have the metonic cycle, and these cycles last about 75 years. So you can experience them in your lifetime where there'll be an eclipse at the same degree every approximately 19 years. And so the metonic cycle for this, there was a solar eclipse on October 3rd of 1986 at 10 Libra, as well as 2005. So you can look back and see what happened in your life around that time. And there may be something that occurs that rhymes. It's not necessarily the exact same event because the other planets are all moving, but there may be something that comes up because it's hitting your chart in the same place. And especially if you have planets or angles or your nodes around 10 degrees of specifically Libra, and I would do 3 degrees on either side. The opposition is Aries, and so there may be events coming in from other people, and the squares are Cancer and Capricorn. So there may be like internal things or like tension pushing you to take action around Libra topics as well, or the house it falls in your chart, or a combination of both can be things that come up for you.
I love how you bring in the cycles because again, history doesn't always repeat, but it can often rhyme. So bringing in these cycles, what was the themes or the flavors of those years, and how it might come back around. So thank you for pointing those out.
Yeah. And then there are these Saros series, and Bernadette Brady in her book, The Eagle and the Lark, or the Art of, The Eagle and the Lark was her original book, but I think now it's just called Predictive Astrology. Apologies, I don't have the name
I think that's
perfect.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. You can just search Bernadette Brady if you're looking for it, or yeah, you'll find it. But there are these Saros series, and they are eclipses that start either at the North or the South Pole, and then every about 18 years, and I think it's 9 to 11 days, there is another one, and they move towards the equator. And there's another one that it's not the same degree. It's like about 10 degrees or so further by in the zodiac, but they have the same nature. So Bernadette Brady delineated the birth chart of these cycles. They last 1,300 years approximately. And so the dates for this one were in 1952, 1970, 1988, and 2006. And the nature of this one, it's a tough one. Like the South Node is a drain. And so the eclipse is near the South Node because that's where it is now. And separation and loss, and beware of physical injury through physical activity. So I want people to be very aware of, especially if your chart is activated, about potential for sports injuries. So make sure you're really stretching and not just, hopping up and running a marathon without the proper warming up, or you will see, yeah, I think we're going to be seeing like physical injuries
I'll take
with
that
this.
advice. The older I'm getting, I need to stretch more. So I'll take that on board.
Yeah, so just be extra mindful. Now, this eclipse is to the Neptune of Israel, and a solar and in the 12th house. So there's going to be a story related to Israel. I think, like Benjamin Netanyahu, his days are really numbered at the Uranus retrograde that happened on September 1st. The same day it was Pluto re-entered Capricorn at the 29th degree, And Venus in Libra was applying to the south node a drain, and Israel is a Libra rising. And 6 of the hostages were killed right before they were going to be rescued. And the people of Israel are in the streets as we're speaking, furious at their leader for not getting a ceasefire and having more people pass away, as well as this ongoing horror story of the war in Gaza. But Uranus retrograde, like all this protests and revolt and in the streets against the Capricorn, the government. So that was one of the stories. So I wonder if this is going to be the leader, because solar eclipses are known for leaders, being taken out. If it's going to be Netanyahu.
That's a really interesting point. Of course, in October, we're going to have the anniversary of the attacks. So I wonder if that's going to add extra fuel to the fire. And of course, people aren't happy with him where he is and for all that he's been doing. I think for the most part, he's just trying to stay in power because I believe he's got a lot of corruption charges and different things on his plate. So it's quite interesting. I think I'm through a Saturn opposition right now, but that'll be really interesting to see what happens. Thank you for sharing.
He's in a Saturn opposition, and the lunar eclipse his chart is rectified, but it looks like the lunar eclipse at 25 Pisces is across his midheaven and his IC. So midheaven, the career point, IC, that he may be, having to move out of the whatever their residence is for their leaders.
Absolutely. Definitely not my favorite human being. Okay. Thank you, Celeste.
Oh, wait. I have some other things to say. Sorry. Okay. I'll speed it up. But eclipses are such a big deal, so spending a little extra time. The eclipse is conjunct Diadem, which is a fixed star at 9 degrees of Libra. And Diadem is the thing like some royal people wear on their head. And it speaks about being of service as not so much like the Regulus or Leo energy of royalty, but it's about a leader who is really focused on being of service. And Black Moon Lilith, which again brings in the Algol symbology about women who are really, intense and passionate about fighting for their own autonomy. Yeah. So I wanted to say that as well. And then the Venus trine Saturn is interesting. There's this whole one of the things that's really caught my eye is that there's this grand trine in water. Water, the intuitive and the feeling body, and it's Mars in Cancer, and Mars is in fall, Venus in Scorpio, and Venus is in detriment, and then Saturn and Pisces, they're all at about 14 degrees. And it's really an interesting grand trine in water. And
I wonder if the nature of the aspect might help out the planets. Of course, Venus receives its exaltation from Saturn being in Pisces, so there might be some help, there might be some give and take. And going back to the female archetypes and record numbers of females registering to vote, particularly females of color registering to vote, I think there's going to be very prominent as we get deeper into October. And of course, I think many of the deadline cutoffs in the States are around the end of October. I'm in North Carolina. I think that's a little shorter, but I think for the most part, it's still within the first couple of weeks of October. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. And the Sabian symbol for this is a professor peering over his glasses at students. So one of the things I am recommending is for parents to be making sure they're really talking to their children about the dangers of drugs and alcohol as they go back to school, because especially colleges, because with that grand trine in water, I really got this image of hazing at fraternities and sororities, and where they force the kids to drink and stuff, and that there could be some health issues related to that for some people. So that's one of the things to just keep in mind. But there'll probably be a big story on college campuses, but we can talk about that when we get to another slide.
Absolutely wonderful. So keep an eye on the kids. Absolutely. Okay, Celeste, into week 2, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Mars enters its shadow where it's going to go retrograde, not till December at 6 degrees of Leo, and then it's going to back it up back to 17 of Cancer. And Mars is the planet of action, assertion, and drive, also conflict. And so once it enters its shadow, we will these there may be events that have a first, second, and third act. So just keep that in mind as you're going through, like things, actions taken there may be a callback to them later because with the retrograde, Mars is going to go over it once, back over the same points, and then back over again. So there may be a story about how you use your energy. Mars strives, Mars achieves, but it's also about conflict. And you can think about Cancer, can be about conflict within the family, um, or like the homeland. You can think about Cancer being like we're going to be seeing rises, and we already are rises of what do you call that when populism or the the I can't think of the word I'm trying to think about. Like I know the far right in
The
Germany had some,
authoritarianism, or
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, or exclusion of the other,
absolutely.
tribalism. That's what I'm thinking.
Tribalism,
Very
tribalism.
tribalism, a clannish behavior
It's
about
interesting you
keeping
talk
each other
about
out.
it's interesting you talk about tribalism, because I think for me, week two, my overview is stay out of the fray would be my advice. We've got, as you've been talking about, we've got this Mercury square Mars entering the shadow period here. Now, this Mercury square Mars is already in fall, but it takes its detriment for Mercury in Libra, so that's not helping any with this harsh aspect. As you're saying, Celeste, it's almost this shouting match in these tribalized factions. And of course, as we, particularly for the United States, as we get deeper through and the tail end of election season, those shouting matches, people are going to be entrenched in their tribes, as you've said, going to be a lot of squaring off. And of course, we can get more detail into this, but Pluto stations direct at the critical degree in its last foray into Capricorn. So there's almost of this potentially destructive, potentially volatile week that I would just say stay out of the fray, particularly with any planet that stations to either go direct or retrograde. It gets an extra oomph of that energy. So that extra Plutonian energy. Yes, we've got Jupiter in there as well. But with the Mercury square Mars, the Pluto station in direct, if you can, just work from home, stay out of the fray.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely, yeah. And I think some of the action's going to be on college campuses is something that I'm getting because Jupiter rules education and it's stationing to go retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini, and Gemini rules education, and Jupiter educates, invests in, it inflates, it makes everything bigger. So when a planet stations, it's like a branding iron on that degree. So you can look at your natal chart and see the story. Jupiter is a benefic, so in general, it'll bring good things. Like Carol Rushman talks about if like this activates a Jupiter Venus trine in your natal chart. Hey, maybe you will win the lottery in some way, like have a jackpot in some way. But it can also be just overdoing things with Jupiter. Yeah. So just keep that in mind and like thinking, oh, I can afford that Mercedes Benz or whatever. And then you're stuck with this 800 or whatever dollar car payment that really puts a squeeze on yourself because Jupiter, you can just assume everything's going to go well when you really maybe doesn't. And you can think about that. Venus trine Mars, Venus in Scorpio. Ooh, coveting. Ooh, I want that nice, 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 nice thing. Yeah. And
I
then
like. I really
trine.
love how you're bringing the balance to this analysis. I mean, we're literally talking about the scales, but on the flip side, it could be a positive time of abundance. But as you're saying, on the flip side, if you're overspending or you're trying to go on a diet and Jupiter expands, all those kind of things, there's always a flip edge to everything that we talk about. So just being mindful. So I love how you explain that, Celeste.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. And also with the Mercury opposite Chiron, that's another, well, it'd be interesting to see how that shows up. Mercury in Libra opposite Chiron in Aries. So yeah, so don't do harm to yourself with this, like because you just want that thing is what I'm getting. Don't stop trying to keep up with the Joneses, comparing yourself to others and feeling you come up short, like with Venus and Venus compares. So that's
That's a
something
really
to
good point, especially in Libra season, that aesthetic quality. So great advice. Don't force yourself to keep up with the Joneses. Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, and that grand water trine, it's like it's an emotionally driven actions that, yeah, to just keep that in mind. And Pluto is wrapping up its work in order to the United States is having its Pluto return, the first one. And that 29th degree is the last degree of the sign. And it's this anaretic degree of crisis and decay. So there's definitely going to be big stories about governments and potentially like there'll be like a release of information about like corruption or something. It'll be interesting to see what's going on with Israel because we saw a bunch of action when Pluto stationed to go to go retrograde. No, I'm sorry. When Pluto re-entered Capricorn, sorry. And now it's stationing in that degree to go direct.
It's a really
It's really
interesting point.
interesting.
And with the tip of Pluto dipping its toes back into Capricorn, and I've mentioned this before, of there's this push and pull this year. A lot of the outer planets retrograde. And as that Pluto goes direct and goes out of Capricorn, ultimately, I've got a feeling as we get into Inauguration Day in 2025, I do hope it's that theme of we're not going back. We're not going back to the racism, the misogyny, the xenophobia. I'm hoping that's the case, and we can actually move forward for the next 20 or so years as Pluto goes through Aquarius. So that's my hope for the future right now.
Me too. Yes. Yeah. But I also, one thing with this grand trine in water, there can be problems, water problems, yeah, as well. So seeing things on the seas, like notice what stories are in the collective about related to water topics.
Well, talking about water is interesting. On the first slide, we were talking about 2005, and that was unfortunately the year of Katrina.
Oh,
And
that's
they're
right.
talking about an active hurricane season. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm on the East Coast, so I know full well about hurricane season. So I wonder if not only we go through September with obviously this is September 4th. We're recording on this today. Well, it's going to be an active September, but I wonder even deep as we go into October, that might be the case. So you bring in that water element. I wonder if that might be an issue as well with flooding if we have later hurricanes come about. So hopefully that's not the case, but that's quite interesting. You bring up the water component.
Yeah, and we have the lunar eclipse at 25 Pisces, so there's definitely going to be stuff about water. There's also a lot about like illness. So like in certain places on the East Coast, mosquitoes borne diseases are raising up. And it could be, yeah, there could be problems around that. And mosquitoes, they like to aggregate around standing water.
Ah, that's a really good point. I think it's been an issue further north from here, but hopefully they don't end up coming further south because that'll be a problem.
Well, it's a good idea to even now start thinking about, although people won't see this till later, putting on your long sleeves and your insect repellent and all that kind of stuff. I would take it very seriously, these warnings about mosquitoes. And it will come up again next year. So, for people who are watching this, keep that in mind. But think about like getting your sandbags together if you live somewhere where there's flooding, or having like some water stockpiled in your house in case, there's bad storms and you can't get out to the store. Have enough toilet paper and all that kind of stuff. Like stocking up for some extras could be a good thing to do just in case.
Wonderful advice. Okay, any final thoughts on week 2 before we move into our next week?
It's going to be a busy week. Hold on to your hat.
Hold on
That's
to
it.
everything. Hold on to
Hold on to
everything in October.
everything.
Wonderful. Okay, into week 3, Celeste, your thoughts.
Yeah, so Mercury in Libra squaring Pluto in Capricorn. That's going to be interesting. And then entering Scorpio. So I wonder, like, because Pluto can unearth things. And so I wonder if there's going to be and Libra getting the legal affairs thing. Hmm. So I wonder what's going to be, what stories are going to break around that time. Yeah,
That's
that
really interesting.
corruption
What stories
prevail.
are going to be unearthed, as you're saying, the Mercury square Pluto? What's going to be Earth? What's going to come out into the news cycle? All of those points of view, absolutely. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and then we have Mars square Chiron. That is, be very careful with sharp objects. Like I get the image of someone's in the kitchen cutting vegetables, not paying attention, and then you sliced your finger. And that could be, yeah, sharp objects are to be mindful of. And like getting into fights. Yeah. Especially with your family members. This is not a good time to be doing that because Mars is in Cancer. But there's going to be, there's going to be stories in the news about people in conflict. The sun is also opposite Chiron. The sun in Libra, opposite Chiron, and trine Jupiter. That's going to be interesting to see what comes up because the sun is the leader. Um, and yeah, the moon is the many when we're talking about mundane astrology. The moon is the people, the sun is the leader or celebrities or that sort of thing.
That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I find
Yeah.
it interesting for October 14th, bringing that Venusian field back to this month in the Venus opposition to Uranus. So I'm just got this feeling of freedom, breaking free relationships. If something has coming up to the boiling up for the surface, where we've had that Mercury square Pluto and all of these unearthed news stories or maybe events in your own life that have come up, maybe the next day it's literally, okay, I'm done with this relationship. I'm breaking free. This is freedom. It's the opposition. And it might be sudden, of course, Uranus, unpredictable here. So that might be quite interesting. Even in the collective, you might hear new stories of sudden breakups in relationships. That might be quite interesting to see in the middle of October.
Yes, Uranus is liberation. I have wondered if, okay, so this this solar eclipse is opposite the sun for Iran. Iran's sun is at 10 degrees of Aries. And I've been wondering since that leader was died in the helicopter crash, if we were going to see the women of Iran rise back up again and asserting their rights because of Masha Amini who was killed by the what do you call it, the morality police back in, I think it was 2023, or maybe was
Yeah,
it 2020?
they had huge riots for a long time, didn't they? Was it the best part of at least a couple of months where women were just throwing off all their garbs and saying we're not putting up with all of this nonsense. And yeah, I wouldn't. That would be quite interesting if those themes come back up again. And I think it was it like in the United States here, it's pretty much student led, I believe, or at least the young folks who are getting out and saying we'll have enough. Again, it's almost that feeling, even worldwide, collectively, we're not going back. I know this is a theme for the United States, but in other parts of the world, people are just, the younger generations are sick of it. You've got that Pluto dipping its toes and going backwards. But I think as we get into next year, maybe collectively the world just says, okay, we've had enough. Let's just move forward. And hopefully that's the case.
Yes, and that whole diadem, the thing, Mercury stationed retrograde on that degree right around the whole Masha Amini story. Yeah, as well as when the Queen died. So there's royal news potentially all over the place. But wouldn't that be beautiful if the women, again, push to assert their rights? And when there's an eclipse opposite your sun, you can feel like you get a little smacked down a bit. So that could be the leaders of Iran have some kind of issues. Also in Afghanistan, I mean, women have basically been like just taken out of. They can't go out unless they're fully covered and not allowed to sing in public or all these things. So,
It's such an
yeah,
awful event because they even stopped women from going and girls going to schools because they were
yes.
going to schools for a period of time. So that's awful. So hopefully that change. that changes. But it's not all doom and gloom in October. I feel like we've been
Yeah.
going towards. We do. We
Well,
may.
I mean, I think that would be a beautiful thing if women got,
Oh,
able
absolutely,
to.
absolutely. I'm just saying the themes of what we're talking about
Yeah.
in
Oh,
October. I feel like October 15th we have this beautiful Venus trine Neptune. I think we might get a bit of a respite in week 3. So collectively, if we're all on edge in October, this might be a nice day to go by the lake or to go by the ocean. I know it's a little cooler in October, well, depending where you are on the planet. But maybe this is a great time to maybe get your paintbrush out, do some art. This may be, for me, a bit of a respite for some of the more challenging energy through October and week 3. Your thoughts, Celeste?
that's very good. Yes, Callum. Yeah, Venus trine Neptune is beautiful. Yeah, that's a really beautiful energy. I feel like a very passionate love affair kind of energy, or like, bring the magic back. If sexy left, bring it back with you and your long-term partner over this time. A date, like planning a really nice date night or something like that. Yeah, could be beautiful. And then that full moon in Aries, where the sun is in Libra, the moon is in Aries, like really spotlighting the axis of relationships. Libra is I partner and Aries is I am. So how do you balance your needs versus your partner's needs in relationships so that you can have win-win solutions? I love this. And Venus sextile Pluto, that could be a nice energy as well. Well, what will happen with Pluto is shadows are revealed, and there can be shadow things revealed about relationships, about maybe you're too enmeshed and you need to do some things on your own or go out with your friends more and let a little air into the relationship if it's gotten to a little bit of thoughts of freedom with Venus entering Sagittarius.
I love that. Wonderful, wonderful. I've got a feeling with that full moon, of course, we're in the Mars rule sign here, and we've got all of these cardinal angles. So, as you've said, we've got the Libra, we've got the Aries, we've got that Mars in Cancer, maybe just adding to that extra element of tension in week 3 as well. So, that's going to be interesting with that full moon energy and that Mars ruling that energy and seeing what comes out in the collective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, Celeste, into week 4, your thoughts?
So Mercury trine Saturn, that can be a time when you um can, if you have the sticking power and the staying power, because Saturn delays things, it slows things down. Mercury rules the mind and our thought processes. If you have the if you stick with something and work hard on it with Mercury and Scorpio here, like you can have success. Saturn is earned success. So that's what I feel like that could be. Now it can also be hearing difficult news. Um, Saturn's, kind of can be a buzzkill about something difficult. And with the Sun square Pluto, that's going to be some big stories around governments or leaders trying to exert control, I feel like, over the people. Pluto can be dominating. Um, yeah, we'll see how that shows up in the collective. Or an exposure of like some story about a leader and it could be a leader of a government or a business. Capricorn rules governments, big businesses, things like that. So we'll see what comes up. And then the sun enters Scorpio, and we're talking about corruption. We're talking about conspiracies. Because the sun is spotlighting and illuminating and focusing us on these kinds of topics. Big wealth, debt, that sort of thing are Scorpio topics. Any other
I,
Scorpio topics you like?
again, I just can't get away from the feeling of October, not to go into too much doom and gloom, but again, it's just edge of the seat kind of energy. It's anticipation. Things aren't quite moving forward yet. We've got a lot of Pluto, Mars, Uranus energy going on. So if you can stay out of the fray, like I mentioned before,
I love
keep
that.
yourself centered and grounded, that's really going to help this month. Of course, this is going to be a great time as well for taking action. So whether it is people registering to vote in the United States, or taking action, organizing, getting people out canvassing, all these kind of things. But there is that, I just can't help but feel that undertone of a heavy energy going on, but also that creative potential that we've got. So I'm very much interested to see what comes up in October.
Yes, and with Jupiter and Gemini, there's this inundation of information being sprayed at people, which can be overwhelming, especially in election season. And a lot of it, Gemini, it can be not necessarily the truth. And I think when Jupiter goes retrograde, one of the things that happens with retrogrades is like you peel the tape up and see what's beneath. So there may be some exposure about some of these disinformation campaigns that are going on. Like right now in the news, they're talking about how Russia and Iran have been interfering, and China trying to interfere in the US election. Iran um, stole some emails from the Trump campaign, tried to get into the Harris campaign, but couldn't. So, and use that to, put out information to try to interfere. So maybe we'll hear more about that around that time.
That's
But
such a
I
great
love
point.
how you say, stay out of the fray.
Stay out of the
Like,
fray.
don't get in stupid arguments with people about, you know, about stuff, and realize there are all these troll farms that people in different countries, that what they have people doing is just commenting on social media all day long, just trying to stir up the fighting against people. Don't feed the trolls, is what I say.
I
Like, why are
love
you
that.
arguing with a stranger on the
Don't
internet?
feed the trolls. Great advice. And I love what you're saying about the inundation of information. And of course, you mentioned Jupiter and a Mercury ruled sign. And particularly here in the United States, just I'm in a swing state, North Carolina. So it's political ad after political ad after political ad. So for me, I just feel like 2025, if we can just take a year-long vacation, that'd be quite nice.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, and Mars sextile Uranus. Ooh, that's going to be oh no. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. So again, this is an opportunity to get into to have like sextiles are opportunities to have some big thing, yeah, with someone, like some big conflict, or you can have a surprise win with that. A
Ooh, yeah.
surprise win. Expect the unexpected with Uranus.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Celeste. Into week 5, your thoughts?
Mars trine Neptune. Mars and Cancer trine Neptune and Pisces. That just feels like a storm. Yeah. So like a lot of heavy rainfall. That's what I get with that. And Venus square Saturn. That is not a time to plan a big party, especially if you want to be outside. I feel like it's going to be Venus square Saturn is like it's a party pooper. Like you wanted to have this great fun, but Saturn, something about it is just like is it a boring party? Because Venus and Sagittarius, like you really want to have a great time, but that Saturnian influence.
It's almost
I oh
that restriction, as you're saying, the Venus square Saturn. Not a great time, as you said, to plan a party. What day will this fall on? At least it'll be a Monday, so that won't be too
yeah,
bad.
but I wouldn't have a party the 25th or 26th.
That's a great point. So maybe that feeling of restriction or something that's not quite right or doesn't feel quite right. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, yeah. So just keep that in mind. It just could be a real bummer. But there's just a bummer energy. Not like it's going to be horrible, but there's a little bit of a bummer energy with that. And then Mercury opposite Uranus, unexpected news, reversals, surprise. Well, there's always the October surprise that comes out in election series season. We'll see what the October surprise is, but yeah, maybe that's when it comes out right before people go to the polls.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Celeste, for going for the first couple of weeks in October. And now we're going to go to each rising sign, and we'll put the timestamps at the bottom of the video that you can go straight to your rising sign. Okay, Celeste, into our rising signs. What thoughts have you got for our Aries rising friends?
Yeah, so for Aries rising, this eclipse is in your seventh house of the partner. So there is going to be a spotlight on your relationships where they are taking your attention and your focus. I think doing really loving things for your partner, if you're in a relationship, is something to think about. If you're single and ready to mingle, maybe, tell your friends. Jupiter and Gemini, we expand with others. Hey, I'd love to meet someone. Do you know someone? Blah, 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 blah. You could think about that. You could try the apps or whatever. But so some people with Venus in ruling it in the eighth house, there may be some shadow things that come up in your relationship. There could be some power struggles over money or resources. So just be aware that this is something that may be coming up, or things about intimacy that is a possibility. And I love how you have communication here. Yeah, you really want to think about clear communication could be the way to get through any kind of hiccups in your relationships.
Wonderful points. Relationships are certainly highlighted here. We've got the faster moving planets moving through the seventh whole sign as we have in this chart. One thing I wanted to mention is your chart ruler, Mars, we've got going in fall, transiting through your fourth house. Now, depending what your ascendant degree is, I'd maybe watch out, particularly if it's beyond that 15 degrees. Maybe you've got 20 degrees Aries rising. Maybe just watching out for some minor incidences or accidents, just being mindful. Maybe it could be around the home. As Celeste, I know you were talking before about paying attention if you're cutting up anything for dinner or any of those matters, maybe anything cutting with Mars, and just paying attention to that, because we've got a bit of a T-square here. We've got the Mars, we've got all the Libra planets going through the seventh. And also there might be on the shadow side, maybe some minor conflict in the home. So if you bring in that relationship component, as Celeste is talking about, we're talking about the fourth house of home, seeing if there's any problems or any conflicts that may arise, and just being mindful. But on the positive side, that Mars could be something to do with working on the home. Maybe you've got a project on the go that you want to work on. Maybe that'll be a healthy outlet for that Mars going through the fourth. And as Celeste is saying, certainly those relationship components, as we've got Venus going through the eighth. Now, the positive side of that Venus going through the eighth, it could be shared resources. It could be a partner has maybe a little bit of bump in income, something along those lines. That could be nice on the positive side. And as we get deeper into the month and that Venus transits and goes into mutable fire, this might be a nice little time for going a bit of a journey. If you have any holidays planned or anywhere you want to go, or if there's anything that you want to do in terms of higher education, any of those themes that might pop up. Your thoughts, Celeste?
Yeah, excellent. That's fantastic. Yeah, there may be a little bit of conflict, Mars, about family traditions, because Mars is in the fourth house. Like, where are we going for Thanksgiving? What are we doing around these different family tradition things? Could be something that has a little bit of a conflict around that. I like using the Mars for weatherproofing your house. Yeah, that could be something that you do, that you take action, because Mars is in the fourth house.
That's
But
great.
recognizing within yourself, okay, this is the way I was raised, with Mars in the fourth, but now I'm with this other person who has these different familial things. So as much as you can with Libra, trying to find win-win solutions, that's the road to success, I feel.
Wonderful advice. Absolutely. Weatherproofing the home, if you can. Absolutely wonderful. And just bringing in that component again, as Venus transits through the ninth, we've got that Jupiter retrograde in the third. So it might be a time, if you are studying astrology, for example, or in higher education, we've got this third ninth axis here as Venus goes through and Jupiter turns retrograde. So it might be a time just to revise any papers that you might have wrote, or anything that might need a bit of a check. Might be interesting as you go through the month. But I love what you're saying, Celeste, about particularly the eclipses that have been bouncing back and forth through the first and the seventh house. It's really been a huge theme for you, Aries Rising, for a long period of time now. Yourself and others really, really highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Taurus Rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
Yeah, so for Taurus Rising, this eclipse is in the sixth house. So with the sixth house is the house of like routines and rituals. it's also burden. So you may find yourself having to do stuff that feels like, you're not really, it just is stuff that needs to be done in order to bring order to your life. So just be aware that things that may come up of this nature, as well as if anything comes up with your health. The sixth house is a house of things that go wrong with your health. The first house is a house of vitality. Just go straight to the doctor. Yeah, especially if there's like a sugar issue, like I get with Libra rules that the is associated with the kidneys and sugar. So be mindful if your doctor tells you about your sugar numbers, do not take it seriously and make those burdensome lifestyle choice changes in order to bring better health to yourself. And with Venus and Scorpio in the seventh, you can do it with someone, like if you have your partner, one of your kids, like your dog, you're going for the sixth house rule, small pets. Yeah, you may get a new pet, or you're just like steading out, walking with your dog every day, and maybe walking a little farther every day to bring to boost your vitality. Taurus, I think, is something that you can think about with Mars in the third house. Uh, be mindful of any kind of conflicts with your neighbors or your siblings. That sort of thing could be coming up. And I just feel like with Mars and Cancer, like you start getting into something, and like 10 minutes later, you don't even remember why you were that person in the first place, is kind of what I'm getting from that.
I love what you're saying here, Celeste, and particularly picking up on your points about health and routine and work. We've got a packed sixth house, whole sign for you, Taurus Rising. So the focus for most of the month is going to be in this house where you're maybe reworking routines, or as Celeste saying, checking out health status. Now, if work is becoming a little cumbersome, and we've got the South Node in there as well, if it's a little bit draining, I like what Celeste is saying. As we've got your chart ruler moving through the seventh house, maybe this is a nice time to take a break and maybe go for a nice meal with your partner, do something Venusian just to take a break, maybe from some of that work and excess strain that might be going on for you guys. You'll certainly be glad when Uranus finally gets out of the first house eventually, but that's still some time to come. But I like what you're saying. Keep an eye out, Celeste, as you're saying with that Mars. We've got the Mars in fall. It's going through the third house. Now, it could be, as Celeste is saying, conflicts with neighbors or siblings. It could also be, if you're working from home, for example, maybe some extra conflict or communication if you're sending emails, maybe something that's a bit more passive aggressive, or a bit of conflict with co-workers could be an issue. We've got the sixth house component with the third, which is interesting as well. So again, if it's just becoming a bit cumbersome, maybe taking a bit of time and going out with a partner or a close friend, one-on-one relationships, and going out to relax for a bit, to escape.
Wow. And yeah, employees. Yeah, there could be like a conflict with an employee, or somebody quits unexpectedly, and then you got to divvy out the work between the remaining people, and then they get mad at you because they've got more work to do, or you have to take on the work that the person who left was doing. Yeah.
Advocate for yourself, absolutely. And of course, we'll have that Jupiter retrograde going through the second house. Now, the positive part of that, anytime a planet stations to go direct or retrograde, there's an extra oomph. So on the positive side, it could be, good fortune in the area of income, something might come along. Or on the flip side of that, maybe being careful to overspend if you had been doing that through the summer. As we're getting into fall, maybe just reworking some of those, because Jupiter, as we know, can expand these topics. So it's not always for the good. So maybe mindful if you are overspending a little bit, I might say.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you, Celeste. Okay, into our Gemini rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
Yes. So for Gemini risings, this is an eclipse in your fifth house. The fifth house rules things we do for joy and what we create. And it can be like children. There may be some new start, like you decide to start a family or something like that, or have another child. It's the house of like dating. So If you're in a relationship, plan some time to do fun things together and go on dates to like the music. If this is something you like, cultural things, yeah, the symphony, the museum, all of that kind of stuff. Just even the movies, sort of thing. Yeah. So I like an eclipse in the fifth house. Could be really really lovely for some Gemini people. And Venus in the sixth, like a little more relaxing of the burdens of life. Yeah, like yeah, take some time off of work, have some good fun is something to be thinking about that. But be mindful about how much you're spending with Mars in the second house, because Mars can burn through your money. Is something is something to be aware of. And Jupiter retrograding in the first. That could be, yeah, just be, well, Geminis in general tend to be on a little bit of a slimmer side, but if you're like doing all this fun and eating and all this kind of stuff, maybe a pound or two stacks back on your frame or something like that. So just be mindful of that.
Mindful of that. It's best part of a year for Jupiter as well. Well, not a year anymore, but that's a really good point, Celeste. I love what you're saying about this packed fifth house. So maybe that's creative pleasure. Of course, Gemini Rising, you'll be pleased that Mercury is now direct, your chart ruler. So things can start moving. So if you have any projects or ideas for creative entertainment, this is going to be lovely. Again, depending what your ascendant degree is, we're going to have the Sun, Mercury trining your ascendant. So this is going to be quite a fairly pleasant time to get about. Gemini Rising, Mercury connecting with others. Now, the preponderance of these planets are pretty much the faster moving planets below the horizon. So this is probably more in the second quadrant of people in your immediate environment. So if you have children, this might be a wonderful time to connect with your children and go out and do activities, creative activities. Or if you want to go by yourself and visit art museums or pick up a paintbrush. I love what Celeste you're talking about with this fifth house. And as you say, Celeste, as that Venus moves through the sixth, maybe that work pressure eases somewhat. Because I think for Gemini Rising, there's been a lot going on for you this year, particularly with Saturn going through the 10th house and maybe some restrictions at work, or maybe if there's been any issues with bosses, particularly if that Saturn is your out of set malefic, might have been an issue this year as well. And of course, we've got Saturn retrograde. So that Venus going through the sixth, it might just, as Celeste is saying, maybe ease some of those burdens at work, possibly, which might come for you. Absolutely. But I love what you're saying, Celeste, about the Mars burning through money. I don't think there's a better description of Mars going through the second. Now, on the positive side, this could be extra energy geared towards maybe extra income for you if you put in more energy into that area of life. But this Mars is in fall, not in the best of shape. So I would certainly take Celeste's advice together, or there might be some conflict in this area of life as well. It might not just be financial or the material world. It could be just your sense of values. Who's irking you? Who's making you mad? And is this affecting your value structure that you're having to defend maybe your points of view? And all these kind of different things might be interesting as we go through October.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, into our Cancer Rising friends. Your thoughts, Celeste?
Yeah, so for Cancer Rising, this solar eclipse is in your fourth house. So that's the house of family. So some family, home family and foundation, some things may come up at home. You may decide you want to do a little redecorating with Libra energy, making your home a more beautiful place. I mean, I love like just even bringing fresh flowers into your home is something that's just lovely. And the moon is your chart ruler. So there's going to be some definitely some emphasis around home. And it also the fourth house is opposite the 10th house. So some new start may be initiated from around your career from someone outside of yourself. Venus in the fifth house. Yeah, bringing some pleasure and flow in the areas of things you create for joy. And Venus has its joy in the fifth house. Yeah, so watch out for being a little jealous in relationships. It's something I would say with that Venus in Scorpio. Mars in the first house, and be mindful about how you're using your energy. Um, yeah, because like I just get the image like watch out for burnout is something that that's coming to me with that energy. And Jupiter in the 12th house. The 12th house can be self-undoing. So taking action to bring some better to improve your vitality is something you can be thinking about doing. Um, Cancer Rising.
That's a wonderful point. I feel like Jupiter in the 12th for the best part of a year, just take a year-long retreat. But I know not everyone can do that. Anyone can do that. A year-long retreat. Yeah, I love what you're saying, Celeste. We've got a packed fourth house as we go into October. So issues around home and family life. Maybe this is a great time to, if you've got any creative projects going on at home, to beautify the home, as Celeste is saying. We've got a preponderance of planets, particularly the faster moving planets below the horizon. So we're still dealing with others in our immediate environment. As some of those faster moving planets go into the fifth, if you've got children, maybe working, or on the other side, it may be working on creative projects that come in. But I really like what you're saying, Celeste, being a little bit cautious of that Mars. That Mars is in fall, going through the first house. I think I mentioned this a little bit last month as well. Particularly if that Mars is going over your ascendant degree, whatever that might be, just being careful and mindful of any, if you're out on the roads or any rash actions might be an issue. We've got the first house, it's the body. So being careful of that Mars as it goes through. But on the flip side, as Celeste is mentioning, maybe putting extra energy into those fields as well. So I love what you're saying there, Celeste.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Okay. Into our Leo rising, friends.
Ah,
Celeste, your thoughts?
so Leo, the eclipse is in your third house, and whenever there's a new moon in your third house, there is an increase in like just busyness of life, or like errands that you're running, or maybe you're doing a lot of short trips. Could be something that comes up during this time. A great time if your car needs to be serviced to take care of it at this time. Um, yeah, air in your tires is coming to me. Libra's an air sign. You can think about that. And Mercury being there in the third house. Yeah, it could be some new starts with siblings and things like that. Could be an issue. Venus and then like you and your siblings can go, or your neighbors can go to an art museum or something like that, or talk about your favorite movies or what have you. Yeah, Mars in the 12th. Be mindful of self-undoing is what I'm getting with that energy. Yeah, think about yeah, great time to be quitting some bad habits, like maybe even thinking about like if you have an issue with sugar, like taking a break from sugar could be something that you do. And what are your thoughts?
That's excellent about Mars. I think be careful of that self undoing. Also, be careful of possible hidden enemies.
Yeah.
So, if we're getting back into work season, particularly as we went through September, and it's that back to work feel, being mindful of many co workers, maybe we've got a packed third house as well, any communications that might go awry, or anyone who is maybe being a bit underhanded at work, maybe watching out for that as we're in the 12th house of hidden enemies. That could be an issue that pops up. So just being mindful of what goes on. We've got your chart ruler in the third house, and as Celeste has been talking about, there's a lot going on here. So whether that's short trips, a lot of communication, if you work from home, this might be a lot of emails going on. We've got Mercury direct now going through the third, eventually be moving into the fourth house. So if you are back to work and you have that vibe, there's maybe a lot going on in the work life, in the work environment. I think I'd say as well, we've got Venus transiting through the fourth house. This might be nice for a small little project if you want to beautify parts of the home. I think Celeste, you were talking about flowers before. You maybe want to get flowers around the home or do something to beautify it. I think that's going to help with the energy of this month for Leo rising. We've got that Jupiter going retrograde. This might be a time if you've spent a lot of this year working with large groups or doing community work. This might be a time where you maybe revise which groups you're with. And of course, Jupiter's going to expand. So that might even expand even further, depending on what you're doing out in the community. And but yeah, for Leo rising, I think that's wonderful. Any thoughts, Celeste, on the eclipses for Leo rising?
Oh yeah. Well, the new starts in the third house, something related to siblings or neighbors and things like that. I got water your plants. Maybe your plants need some special food with Venus in the fourth. If you have like some plant that's dying, take
I love that.
take
So if you're beautifying the home, make sure you're watering those plants.
exactly. And yeah. Mm.
Wonderful. The one thing I will mention about Saturn, of course, not much going on, but we've, for a long time, Saturn through that eighth, it might not be the best of times if you're looking to go to a bank, say, and borrow money. I don't think this is the best of times for quite a while. And of course, we've still got Neptune hovering in the eighth. It could be issues with, particularly if it's your outer set malefic, it may be issues in terms of shared resources, maybe something to keep an eye on, some restrictions there. So that might be a word of caution, I think, for you,
Yeah,
Leo
arguing
rising.
about inheritances with your siblings.
Ah, absolutely. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Celeste. Okay, into our Virgo rising friends. Celeste, your
Yeah.
thoughts?
So Virgo, new starts in the second house of finances. So what do you want to, yeah, maybe you're thinking about taking action to add, like if you have your own business, add additional services, or thinking about how you want to move up the ladder in your career, because Uranus next July is going to be going in your 10th house, and you may be thinking about making changes with your career. So that's something to be thinking about with the Venus in your third house. Like maybe you want to update your, I'm just getting like beautify your written documents like your resume or your LinkedIn profile or alignable if you're a small business owner or something like that. There can be maybe with Saturn in the seventh a need for discussing with your partner if you're married about finances, and with the South Node in your second house, like being mindful about staying within your means is something that I'm getting.
I love that. I think with Virgo rising, your chart rule, I think you're happy now, or going to be happier that Mercury is was turned in direct as for a long time now. It's picked up speed. Oh, I'm going to cut this out. I'm thinking about September. Never mind. I'm going to
Yeah.
cut that out.
Okay.
I was thinking to myself, oh no, Mercury direct. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut it out from the other bit as well. Never mind. I'm confusing myself.
No worries, no worries. We're doing this early.
Wonderful. So Virgo rising, I think for you, particularly with a lot of these faster moving planets in the first quadrant, I would say the emphasis here is to work on yourself. I mean, with partnerships, we've got Saturn for a long time and Neptune going through the seventh house. My advice would be to focus on your own goals. Again, we're in the first quadrant. What do you want out of life rather than what others expect from you? I think is the theme for me as we go through October. As Celeste is saying, we've got an emphasis here on possessions and values. Now, this might not be tangible possessions. We could also be talking about your value structures and thinking about what's meaning for you in life. What are your value structures? What mean the most to you? We've got Venus going through the third house as well. So this might be a nice time to connect and reconnect with siblings or have a nice jaunt around town, maybe go to a museum, something Venusian. Might be a nice time as we go through October. With Mars, we've got Mars going through the 11th house. You might have had a lot of activity in terms of working with communities and groups. I know we're in election season here. So if you've been out involved with that, this might be an extra time with extra energy in working with groups and pulling together. Celeste, any thoughts on that Jupiter in the 10th for a long
Mm.
time?
Yeah, Jupiter is expanding at work. So hopefully getting some nice opportunities, but there can be like with sometimes Virgo risings, you want to just do everything yourself or have that kind of control. But with Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, we grow with others. So keep that in mind. Yeah.
That's
Like,
wonderful
but
advice. I've got my
some project may have a little bit of a delay at work with the retrogrades can bring delays. So that's just something to be aware of. But
you really make a really good, wonderful point about Virgo risings and I've got Virgo rising friends. I love to help others, but sometimes you've got to help yourself as well. But you work with others, that's great as well. But you deserve the credit you're getting this for the best part
Yes,
of the
yes.
year.
Hopefully there's a like so you're getting some nice boost up with your work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I love that card.
Okay, into our Libra rising friends. Celeste, your
It's
thoughts?
Libra risings have been through it the last year and a half with the South Node in your first house. Like a lot of Libras have found little feelings of like a little bit of low energy, or easier to get sick and things like that because um, it's a house of vitality. So for this, there may be you're wrapping up the work you've been doing, and a lot of Libras are like that constant focus on the other. They're working more on themselves and burning off old stories about themselves. And some shadow Libra things can be about people pleasing or just going along to get along. So just I think it's a great time to reflect on over the last year what changes you have made in your communication style and how other people see you, and taking action more for yourself. And what other things do you want to do? Do you want to improve your appearance, or your branding could be something if you have your own business that you work on with this solar eclipse? Venus in the second house. Hopefully, your values, you're feeling better about yourself. It's your chart ruler, but it's in the side of its detriment. And yeah, some shadow stuff may be coming up with Scorpio about yourself and how you value yourself or value others, or self-esteem. Some things may be coming up for you, like Saturn in the sixth house. It's felt like there's a lot of burdens and extra toil in your life. Um, has been maybe something that's been going on, but this time is coming to an end. And think about all the great things you've learned about yourself throughout this time. With Mars in the 10th house, be mindful about, like, this is great to take action for your career and the things that you want to do, but be mindful of getting into like some conflict or things like that. Maybe you decide you need to want to go back with Jupiter in the ninth to get some kind of certificate or a little education to take action to improve your career. Could be something.
Wonderful advice. And Celeste, as a Libra rising myself, I feel heard by everything that you've just mentioned. I think I've mentioned this a few times, Libra risings, as Celeste has been saying, that South Node has been real tricky going through our first house. Now, natally, I have South Node on my ascendant anyway, but it has for me, particularly this year, been very, very draining. Celeste, you've made that point where it's a lack of energy or just feeling zapped of energy. That's very, very much apparent for me this year. We compound that with Saturn, which has been going through our sixth house, and Neptune in there as well. I think I've mentioned this every month, but if you can find a way to structure your life, whether that's reevaluating your diet, what your intake is, or reworking any routines in terms of if work is being a bit cumbersome, or if you're looking to really make a new regime at the gym. This is what I've done in the last couple of weeks. I've tried to cut down on my sugar intake and all of the pizzas and all of the rubbish and the junk that I eat, and to stop with that, reworking those, because particularly as Celeste is saying with that South Node has been fairly draining. But thankfully, this is not going to last forever and we can move forward. I think that Venus, our chart ruler, Celeste is saying, moving through our second house. On the positive side, this could be a little bump in income, depending on what you're doing, maybe something on the side. It could also, as Celeste is saying, being in detriment, maybe a revision of what we values. This doesn't have to be tangible. This could be saying to ourselves, what's our value structure in life? What do we believe in? And maybe Venus coming over through that Venusian qualities is maybe again getting us to evaluate some of those parts. Celeste touched on that Mars in fall going through our angular 10th house. On the shadow side, could this be issues with bosses at work? Could this be anything to do with your public standing, your career? Keeping an eye out as Mars transits for all the way through October into all the way through. Absolutely. On the flip side of that, for Mars transiting through the 10th, it could be extra energy involved in career goals, all those kind of themes that pop up. Celeste, I know you touched on that Jupiter going retrograde. We're going to have that for a long time through our ninth. So if you are studying astrology, you're in higher education, or you're just looking to travel further afield, a great time to review and revise and see what you want to do in that area of life.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
sign up for my transits course. It starts at Kepler on October 27th.
Yes, great plug. Absolutely. Celeste is absolutely brilliant. So Transits course is coming up. And the thing with the Transits courses, if you can't attend the live sessions, everything is recorded so you can watch it at your leisure. But yeah, excellent. And Celeste, I'll put those links in the description as well. Excellent point.
Please do. Yeah, and I'm so glad you feel seen as a
Thank you
Libra.
so much. Very, very much seen. Wonderful. Okay, Celeste, into our Scorpio rising friends. Your thoughts?
So the solar eclipse is in your 12th house. So there may be something illuminated to you about 12th house topics. This is a time to get extra rest. The 12th house is a house of solitude. So maybe you need a little retreat, even just a weekend retreat, or where you take some time to yourself to really think about getting extra rest. Your sleep hygiene is something I would love for Scorpios to be thinking about and being mindful about. Yeah, Venus going through your first house is nice because yeah, you're more appealing to others potentially, and you may be able to magnetize some things to yourself that you desire. The Mars in your ninth house. If you're traveling, just double check your itinerary. There can be little problems and hiccups during travel, is what I'm getting with that. Yeah. And
Wonderful point. I love what you're saying here about particularly Venus going through the first. I think for Scorpio rising, if this has been quite a challenging year for you, I would say this is a great time for retreats and meditation. We've got the lights going through the 12th, well, certainly at the beginning of October, Mercury going through there, eventually go through your first house. So you can, I think, at the beginning of October, maybe take a bit of retreat, go and pamper yourself, particularly if that Venus is coming over your ascendant, if your early degrees of Scorpio rising. If you are feeling a bit fraught or a bit out of place at times, this is a great time to treat yourself, pamper yourself, maybe go for a spa day, or again, maybe go for a retreat. That'd be wonderful to do for you. And Celeste, you're talking about your chart ruler, that Mars in fall going through the ninth. Now, yes, this Mars is in fall, but I think, especially as it makes nice connections to your ascendant, this would be quite a nice time to take some action. And Celeste is saying if you're moving or if you're traveling abroad, double checking everything that you're doing. But it might be a great time to put some energy into going for maybe a vacation, long distance vacation. If you're in higher education or you're learning astrology, for example, this is a great time to plow through those books and to do all of your work as you go through. But I think that's a really good point. Celeste, any thoughts about that Saturn in the fifth for Scorpio rising?
I think there could be tests, challenges with your children. Well, if you have children, there's always going to be tests and challenges, or just may feel like there's not as much time for fun and enjoyment. But maybe you need to schedule it. Be intentional about making sure that you have some fun and enjoyment in your life with Saturn there. Having some discipline about scheduling the downtime.
Wonderful advice. And picking up on that Jupiter as well, this won't be for everybody, but I have a Scorpio rising friend who's coming into an inheritance. And of course, that Jupiter's there for a long time. So it might be Jupiter retrograde in the eighth, maybe reviewing some of the financial statements, whatever that might be. It could also be shared resources with a partner. And, you know, the best part of Jupiter could expand some of these themes. So this might be a good time. Also, if you're looking to, say, expand a business or do something, maybe a good time to ask banks to borrow large sums of money. But particularly this best part of a year is the benefic goes through the eighth. Yes, Jupiter is in detriment, but the greater benefic is still benefic. So this might be an excellent time to ask if you need to borrow money. Those kind of themes, I think, will do well for you.
Yeah, I was thinking about buying a house
Oh,
for Scorpio risings. They may be thinking about taking a loan. out for buying a house.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, because Pluto's been dancing around their fourth house.
And especially as Venus, as we get deeper into the month, Venus is going to transit through your second house as well. So bring in that financial component. We'll have the second eighth house axis being
Yes.
activated with those planets. So absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Some sweetness money in your pocket.
that's right. Okay, into our Sagittarius rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
The solar eclipse is in your 11th house of hopes and dreams, friends, organizations, good fortune. So think about how you can, I feel like it's expanding in this area of your life. Yeah, maybe you want to host some kind of community and community gathering, or bring some friends together, like to have just have a good time, or do something cultural. With Venus in your 12th house, maybe it's like doing a little retreat, like a little yoga retreat or something. Like Sagittarius, getting out in nature, if the weather's decent where you live at this time of the year, could be a beautiful thing that you do with others, either like a group, like you could join, like say you move to a new city or something like that. You could join a one of those friend organizations with Meetup. It's something I like. Yeah, and then Venus is going to be coming into your first house. You put the effort in at the eclipse, and then you meet new people and have some fun with them is possible. Yeah. And thinking about your what do you want to be, where do you want to be in a year from now, could be something you think about, and taking actions for that.
I absolutely love that for Sagittarius rising. You make really good points there, Celeste. We're looking at the planets here, particularly the faster moving planets. We've got a preponderance of planets above the horizon. So it is dealing with others in society. And I love how you're saying bringing in friendship groups. We've got a packed 11th house here. And we also got the seventh house component with that Jupiter going retrograde. So friendships, groups, Venus going through the 12th. If you're going out on retreats, Sagittarius rising, you don't like to sit still. So if it is happening to go with friends and get out and about, have some enjoyment, as Celeste is saying, enjoy yourselves, go out and do all those things. The only thing, the word of caution, I think I've got for Sagittarius rising is we've got Mars in fall going through the eighth house for the best part of October. So if you are in a one-on-one relationship, maybe there's some conflict that arises in terms of shared resources that might come up for you. You may also have issues with, could be debts may be involved here as well. Probably not the best of times to be asking to borrow from banks, any of those kind of matters. So then maybe just for me, a bit of a word of caution for that Mars going through the eighth. Celeste, your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And some shadow stuff may be coming up in your mind about how you mm, about how you take action with Mars in the eighth. I think about the eighth house as a house of shadows, things that we would rather not admit about ourselves. Yeah, and maybe like if you have a conversation with a friend and they accuse you of being non-committal, could be something that comes up with the Sagittarius, or making plans and breaking them. And then you just may have to do some thoughts around that and soul searching, and maybe you decide you want to make some changes.
Wonderful points. Wonderful points. I think that as that Venus transits for your first house, maybe just if things are getting a bit ikesome, just go and enjoy yourself. Have a spa day. Go and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I love it.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Capricorn rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
Yeah, so for Capricorn, it's in your 10th house of career. What new starts do you want to be making? And with the South Node there, if you haven't changed jobs yet, with these eclipses that have been impacting your 10th house, maybe you are going to change jobs at this time. So it could be a really good time to think about yeah, what you want out of your career. And Venus in the 11th, networking. You can gain through networking with friends and organizations and things like that, the relationships that you have. with Jupiter in your sixth house, there can be some, it's not necessarily that you get money from the work you do, but there could be like some positive acclaim or like a award that you get from your work with this. Yeah. Mars in the seventh house, your partner might be saying to you, you're spending too much time at work, Capricorn. You know, you're really focused on your ambitions and growing. And you may need to like the relationship, Libra, you gotta there's some tension between it and like the work and the partner. So just be mindful. You may have to do a little restructuring to make sure there's some balance, work-life
Wonderful. Every,
balance.
every every Capricorn rising I know works extra hard, probably harder than anybody else that I know. It doesn't even matter where that Saturn is placed either. always, always working hard. That's a really great point. I feel like for Capricorn rising, I feel you'll have more success, as Celeste is saying, in that realm of larger group projects or community projects, maybe more so than the one-on-one personal relationships. That might be a little bit irksome as you have that Mars in fall transiting through the seventh. Maybe some conflicts arise with either partners or close one-on-one friendships. So I would say your joy is going to be more in the collective, more in these group activities. I think for you, Capricorn rising, as Celeste is saying, we've got a lot going on highlighted in the 10th house. We've got that work component, and with that Jupiter for the best part of the year going through the sixth house. So maybe, as Celeste is saying, something comes through that work, particularly if you've got the midheaven up there in the 10th, and you've got any Jupiter connections in the trines, maybe some recognition. That's a really good point, Celeste. But I think with Jupiter, maybe the flip side in the sixth, if you're feeling maybe overworked at times this year, maybe it's a time to evaluate how much work and effort you're putting in versus what you're getting out.
Excellent.
Because again, as Celeste is saying, you work really, really hard, extra hard, and with that chart ruler retrograde in the third as well. My advice would be just to say, as that Jupiter goes retrograde, how much am I putting in versus how much I'm getting out? I think that's my advice for you, Capricorn rising.
I love that.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Excellent advice.
Thank you, Celeste. Okay, into our Aquarius rising friends. Celeste, your thoughts?
So the solar eclipse is in your ninth house of long distance travel, higher education, broadcasting, publishing. Maybe you want to start a podcast with a friend or something like that with the Libra, bring in, the one-on-one people. Maybe you complete with the South Node there. Maybe you've been studying and you complete some kind of project. And in the 10th house, you get some kind of acclaim of Venus with Venus there, acclaim for whatever additional things that what you've studied has brought to you. Yeah. Jupiter in the 5th house, having some pleasure and some enjoyment and some fun. Yeah, some Aquarius risings are having children and things like that. And and maybe like the education is bringing a little bit of a financial pinch with Saturn in the second, but the earned success from what you are doing will come at some point. But Aquariuses are going through some changes where they're burning off old stories about themselves and hopefully feeling empowered in new ways with Pluto dancing. Pluto's been going back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius are some things to be thinking about. And Mars in the 6th house, taking actions to improve your health. Now, especially if you have hereditary issues, your parents have certain issues, maybe taking some actions to be preventative health for yourself around preventative health.
Wonderful advice. I love what you're talking about before. We've got a lot of faster moving planets above the horizon here. So we're still out in public. We're going from the 9th, eventually into the 10th and into the 11th. With a lot of these planets moving forward. So the 9th house topics, if you're in higher education or you're planning an overseas trip, this might be an area that's highlighted. That Venus looks quite lovely, particularly as it goes through the 10th house. So if your relationships with bosses or superiors might be good at this time, or if you're your own boss, this might be a time, as Venus, if it goes over your midheaven, where you're seeing quite favorably in your public standing in public life. This might be a great short time as Venus comes through. Maybe a lot of work. I think, Celeste, as you're saying, as that Mars in fall goes through the 6th house, I would maybe, again, look at health components as that Mars goes through. On the flip side, this might be just a lot of energy in the area of work where you may be getting a little bit taxed in terms of how much you're being asked to work, maybe coming up for you as Mars is going through there. But again, it just might be a lot of energy, a lot of work in your day-to-day life as that Mars comes through. And that Saturn, any thoughts, Celeste, that Saturn retrograde has been in the second house for Aquarius Rising for quite some time. Any thoughts there?
Just so maybe some constriction around the personal income, or maybe you're working really hard to save up for something, like save up for a car or a house or what have you, or just feeling like maybe for some will be feeling like, oh my God, I work so hard, but it's hard to get ahead with the inflation and the cost of living and all of these kinds of things. So yeah, but Saturn's going to leave Pisces next year. So
Aquarius Risings, I think we'll be enjoying that. Absolutely. And I love what you said about that Jupiter as well. So any creative projects you've got going on, we've got nice connections here in October with a lot going on in the 9th house. So any creative projects, any ideas that you've got coming on, if you've got children of your own, maybe a great time to go and expand activities in that house and take them out on a fun field trip or whatever that might be. I think this is going to be a good time for that. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, Celeste, last but not least, our Pisces rising friends, your thoughts?
Yeah. So the solar eclipse is in the 8th house, and the 8th house is the house of, it can be, it's inheritances, it's taxes. Maybe you want to think about your tax strategy. Maybe you want to work on your will or something like that. It's also anguish of the mind. So just be mindful of not letting yourself, like with Pisces, like building a story up in your head where you see all this doom and gloom coming. Just get a hold of yourself and think about it. Am I letting my imagination run away with me with whatever situation? If there's some new start, and it can be about intimacy with you and your partner, like there can be, ooh, something comes up where you're in this like kind of power struggle or having to come together and really talk about something that's, difficult or unpleasant. It could be about financial resources, like how much money you're going to spend on a trip with Venus in the 9th house, but it can be uncomfortable, but it's a real call with Saturn in your 1st house. Every Pisces rising has an issue around healthy boundaries, and you're being challenged to have some healthier boundaries between you and the other. It could be about children with Mars in the 5th, like you and your partner are in a bit of a conflict or have a difference of opinion about how you want to discipline children or something like that, or yeah, or treat the children equally with a Libra. Libra wants fairness for all, kind of thing. Could be something that comes up for you, is what
I
I'm
think you
saying.
Pisces rising have had a bit of a rough ride for a time. Celeste, as you're pointing out, we've had that Saturn for such a long time, Neptune for even longer. So it's been not an easy long period of time for Pisces rising. But I get the feel for October. We've got, yes, it's a malefic, but we've got that Mars going into the 5th, which will make a nice trine to whatever your ascendant degree is at some point. So maybe some creative pleasure or some creative activities or projects that you might have on the go. We've got that Venus moving through your 9th house. Will make a nice trine connection to your ascendant. If you can have maybe a day where you can just relax, and if you enjoy reading, philosophy, if you love astrology, maybe pick up some books, take a bit of time for yourself. Because I think as that Mars was going through your 4th house and hitting the square to those ascendant degrees, this is easing up a little bit, I think, as that Mars is going through the 5th house. Because again, that Saturn and Neptune not being the easiest time for you Pisces Rising. I'm trying to think what else is going on. Jupiter
Reinvigorating
retrograde.
your sex life with your partner, because you
Oh,
can think about the eighth
yeah.
house of intimacy and the fifth house of sex for fun. Yes,
Oh, I
that could
love
be
that.
something you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did we touch on Jupiter retrograde?
No, but if you invigorate your sex life, you're having more fun at home. Is that okay to say? I hope I don't get in trouble.
Celeste, I'm gonna clip that and put it out as a short. Oh, that's the statement of the month. I love that. Absolutely love that. But excellent point. Enjoyment at home. Of course, Jupiter's there for a long time. We're going retrograde. If you're looking to expand your home, maybe you're looking at an extension, looking to expand the home, all those kind of topics, that's going to be around for quite some time. Is going to be absolutely lovely. But Celeste, yes, the absolute statement of the day. I absolutely love it. And of course, we've got a lot of eighth going on. So maybe some of the shadow side, maybe seeing what is hidden and what isn't seen. But as that Mercury and Sun starts transiting through the ninth, and eventually as we get deeper and later into next month, after this one, all of these public topics are coming out for view. So, Celeste, any final thoughts for Pisces Rising?
Yeah, no, I think that's
we can end it on that one.
I think it's good. Just know Neptune and Saturn are going to move out of your first house next year. So get ready for a lightening up of the energy.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Celeste, thank you so much again for a wonderful forecast. I always highly enjoy these episodes, but I want to switch on to you. So what's going on with you right now? What's coming up, and what should everyone know about?
Yeah, so I'm Celeste of Astrology by Celeste, and you can find me on all the socials at Astrology by Celeste. My website is astrologybyceleste.com. There is the OPA retreat. There's probably still time to come. It's October 16th through 21st. I'm teaching about moon mastery for 3 days. I may not have any spots left by this time, but you can check it out. Check it out. I host monthly new moons workshops, so you can come to them, and always can come for a personal reading or consultation. I love helping people with any kind of growth. I have 25 plus years in corporate, so in my background, so I can help you with your career goals or just learning, understanding yourself better. And the Celestial Insights podcast is available wherever you listen to help you navigate the energies of the week like a boss.
I love that. Like a boss. I love it. And for everybody watching, I'll leave all the links to Celeste. What was I going to say? Celeste events coming up, as well as all the social media links, both in the comment box and the description box. And Celeste, you'll also be teaching a transits class at
Oh, yes. October 27th, it starts. I'm teaching transits. It's a 5-week class on Sundays. So please join me. But don't wait. Sign up, because it's gonna sell out.
It's gonna go fast. So as soon as you hear this, sign up as soon as possible.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Celeste, again, and thank you all for watching. And Celeste will be back with us for the, let's see, October, November, December, January. Are we going to do the first of the year? Is that
I'm
correct?
doing something in December with, yeah, there's a December forecast going on.
Oh, that's correct. That's correct. I'm trying to go through my brain. I'm like, yeah, there we go.
It's on my calendar, but I can't remember exactly what it is. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for your brilliant insights. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for your brilliant insights. This is always such a joy to talk about the astrology with you.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again in the next forecast. And we'll have a wonderful rest of your week.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.